This is every idea you need for a Minecraft makeover. And hey, YouTube told me that no one's ever subscribed to the channel using their elbow. And honestly, I don't know why anyone would, but if you want to change that, then whack your funny bone on that white button below. It's free, and it helps out a ton. Diorite is not a popular block, and it's definitely not a popular block on Hermitcraft.
Look at him! Yes!
But Iscal just might have to live with this when you can see how good it looks in this example. Since here, using diorite together with bone blocks makes it look like old plaster that's being used on the walls. And I think that's really perfect, especially mixed together with something like this dark oak or spruce logs that we got here. And I think this idea in the comments also could be used to help out, using white concrete powder tucked in as well. That way you're adding a whole lot of texture to what would have just been a white wall. And I think that's just perfect, especially if it means that I have a use for diorite. Since the fact that we're not able to use the other stone types to make stone tools the way that we can with Deepslate or Blackstone, yeah, I think that's just embarrassing. They need some kind of help. Mossy cobblestone can look fine in certain situations, but when you see it by itself, it really just looks ugly. But here, I think what Mega Miner DL did in this example was really fantastic, since by itself, it does stand out. I mean, it's camouflage that's not being camouflaged. And the idea of using this with your vehicles to have them stand out when they need to and then disappear when they're supposed to, that's a really clever way to use this block. It also gives a use to all the different stair and slab variants that we have for these as well, because if I'm being honest, I've never found a use for them otherwise. Maybe in a path, but to actually be able to build something and have it look real and man-made, that's impressive. Plus this picture they took of it is just really nice on the subreddit. Nothing but flowers to give to this. Nice work. For a long time, players have complained about the ugly red band that goes around a bale of hay, and we're guilty of that ourselves. That's why in our illegal build hacks video, we opted for having a naked version of the block and thatch. It just looks a lot nicer. Except in this scenario, I think it's actually a benefit, since tucking it into the bedspread as we see in this example, then it just adds a pattern onto what we have on our bed. Plus the different lines of wheat make it look like folds in the fabric. I think that's really clever. And hey, straw's using barns too, so I guess that's a safe thing for any bedwetters. When you think of one of your Minecraft builds catching on fire, you're usually thinking of the end of the world. I mean, that's all of your work literally going up in smoke. But here, that's the point, and it is your hard work. And I think the idea of using dead coral and dead bushes inside of the fire to trail off into a gradient for the smoke is a really clever touch. And then using more vibrant regular coral as it gets lower and lower, I mean, this is just beautiful. Forget having a particle system in Minecraft. This user literally built it, and it looks better than what I could dream of. And you don't have to worry about disabling fire tick for this one, so there's a couple of benefits to that. Old Netherrack is a texture that's famous for being one of the ugliest that's ever graced the game. Or disgraced the game? I don't know. It's not a pretty sight. And while we've talked about that our fair share, I mean, literally look at this thumbnail and see that we've talked about it. I think what this user's done here is actually put the old Netherrack texture into good use. Which I know is a lot for me to say, but what Iron Lining does here by using it as old roof tiling, I think is particularly pretty. And now all the busyness of the texture just looks like actual different layers of depth to the tiling that's done in the roof. And it really doesn't look the same if you try this again with new textures. So if you're stuck to playing in older versions that are stuck with this texture, then this could be a solution for you. Respawn anchors have such a dark texture that it might be easy to forget that they're actually a light source. But as this post shows off, if you were to tuck one of these respawn anchors into a ceiling made of crying obsidian, then sure enough, we've got ourselves a hidden light source in your ceiling. Just make sure that none of your friends are coming through and adding too many glowstone inside. Or if they are, then just build this inside of the nether where it's not gonna explode. We don't need your ceiling lights trying to kill you. Netherbrick fences and regular fences do not connect, which most of the time could seem annoying, but here it actually ends up being quite useful. Since, as this user was to show off, by alternating between dark oak fences and netherbrick fences like so, we're essentially creating larger fence gates than we ever thought were possible inside of vanilla Minecraft. Which is a nice touch when the alternative to get a method like this would be to use a debug stick and individually toggle off all of these fences. I'd much rather just craft some nether brick and do it this way. And then next to granite and bricks, it actually pairs quite nicely. And after all, they're all warm tones, so when you alternate it just right, it's something that shows that you're ugly alone, but when you band together, you might just have something going on for yourself. The end portal frames always seem to look out of place compared to the rest of the end portal texture, and definitely compared to the rest of the stronghold. And while I guess part of that is intentional, what user RoPractical1304 did in this post is make something that both makes sense and looks a whole lot better. And here, by just simply incorporating the end portal texture inside of an actual ender pearl design, we get something for your portal room that really looks like it could fit in at any point of your Minecraft journey. Whether you're first going to the end, or you're going for the 1000th time to visit your Enderman farm. Though honestly, building this later might be a good idea, because the way that they built this, they used diamond blocks to actually pull this off. And yeah, something about using 27 diamonds to get this design, don't get me wrong, it looks great, but if they weren't right there, would anyone notice? I have no clue. Maybe that's a little easier to build if you're in creative mode, just saying. The cauldron's an awkward block. I think basically the channel at this point serves as a resume for why not to hire the cauldron at this point. But while it might not always be good for its actual uses, the way that user Theo tries put it together in this post is something funny at least. Adding together a wither skeleton skull and a couple of trapdoors flipped up like this, we've effectively got ourselves a flying animal in the skies. Is it a pretty animal? Not necessarily. I think its cuteness is more in its quirkiness. But does it give us a use for our cauldron? Also true. And for that, I'm always grateful. Coconut trees don't look like they're coming to Minecraft anytime soon. Spammo Mojang might have suggested on their Minecraft feedback website. So if we're not going to see these in the next update, that's okay, because we're able to see them right now using decorated pots. And the genius part about this is by using undecorated decorated pots. Yeah, I know, that seems a little confusing, but stacking them together like this, you get a really convincing palm tree bark here. And then with a couple of dark oak wood blocks up here in the leaves, we get a really nice coconut tree to put in your tropical oasis. But be careful, considering the fact that pots are rendered differently inside of the render distance, you step far enough away, the leaves and other blocks will still render, but now you got a floating palm tree, which for an oasis might be a fun detail anyway. When you're trying to sell the atmosphere of a build, it's the small things that'll make the biggest difference. And when we talk about that, particle effects definitely stand out against the rest. You see, say you're building a dungeon or a basement in your world, and you want to prove that it's run down. Well, add some water over top and a waterlogged stair below, and now you can prove that this place is damp and dreary. In Bedrock Edition, trees are known to fall over, but in Java, not so much. So, I guess that's our job. But we don't have to be boring about it, and by help of using the wood blocks instead of the logs, we can build ourselves a custom tree like this that seems to have toppled over in the forest, which I think is a great detail to have, especially if you have some kind of lumberjack shack nearby. Oh, and for the cherry on top, place a bee nest off to the side here. Then it really looks like one toppled over. One of the major changes in the first part of the Caves and Cliffs update was the revamp of ore textures. And regardless of how you feel about them, the new looks do offer up some new details. And my favorite might just have to be the gold ore. As some have pointed out, by mixing these in the stone floor underneath a beehive, you can make it look as if the honey is dripping out of an overstocked nest. And I think that's just adorable. Minecraft banners don't show wear and tear, but we're about to add both of them in. By using gray patterns like this one on a gray wall of stone, we can make it look as if the banners were torn during a battle, which will help us tell the story of a more desecrated part of the castle. And since we can use even more muted colors for the dye, we can add those in and make it look as if the banner's fading with age. While I doubt we'll get any kind of Buildcraft style pipes in game anytime soon, that doesn't mean that we can't play the part. And for that, our top candidate is the new copper lightning rods. These are already perfect additions to any steampunk build, but add some levers and the pipes come together themselves. And if you got yourself a drowned farm, the supplies are already there. Instead of using dripstone for your traps, let's use it for walls instead. By using the different heights of the spikes, we can make a much more menacing fence around your base. And to me, this starts to look like the kind of pointy wood walls that you'd see in something like Clash of Clans, making this an even better fit for your early game rural base. Particles can do a lot for the atmosphere of your build, but without the help of commands and survival, they're not very easy to use. Though with help from the crying obsidian block, that might just be changed. See, by putting these in your roof, they can fall through the trapdoors and add some extra magic to your enchanting room, which is a neat effect for sure. With just a tripwire hook and some trapdoors, we can add a convincing tree tap to your tapped trees. And from that point, it's up to you to choose what kind of sap you're collecting from the tree. Whether that's using a honey block next to a birch tree for tree sap, or a redstone block with a crimson tree to look a bit more sinister. And for such a simple idea to pull off, this really is creative, and it won't take up much space either. So if you can't go through all the effort to build a custom tree, at least you can make a bone meal tree look a bit more custom with one of these. Clearly, a little detail goes a long way. So while it would be nice to add a potted plant to your Minecraft house, why stop there? Instead, we could add something like vines to the outside of the leaves, and give it some much needed depth to the vegetation. So if you're not already playing with something like Vanilla Tweak's Bushy Leaves add-on, this might be a good alternative. With each new update, Mojang gives us in the building community something to play around with. And for the wild update, that's currently the addition of Sculk. And since the Sculk veins function like vines, we can completely reimagine our existing textures. For instance, we can take after this user and make our own blue variant of the standard magma block. If you just put two big dripleaf plants facing into each other, then their texture merges so perfectly that we got ourselves our very own Dripleaf Bench, which I think is a perfect addition for any park they put this in. But if you're worried about those drip leaves falling down as soon as you sit on them, don't worry, because with a couple of redstone torches underneath, we have a survival-friendly way to make sure that these don't fall. Waterlogged slabs can be a real ace up your sleeve, because what everyone sees as a normal block actually has the same properties as a water source. So, while sure, we can't place lily pads on dry land, if we waterlog a slab in that floor, then we can play by our own rules. So to anyone looking to open up their aquatic details to the landlubbers on shore, this might just be your golden opportunity. If you think about it, composters would make for great barrels. At least they would if we could fill them with something other than the pod's texture. But luck luckily, with armor stands, we don't have to give up on that wooden barrel dream. Rather, if we chuck one of these statues inside the hitbox and throw a block on its head, we can make a custom barrel filled with our choice. And I think that's better than this trapdoor option in one key way. We can have varying heights of liquid, which basically lets us create our own cauldrons. When you think of using signs in building, you're probably picturing something like this. But folks, that's only scratching the surface. And it turns out that even without text, these could be an invaluable resource to add. For instance, look at these columns. What would have been simple stacks of blocks become something much more upscale when we add signs for detail. And I think when you're able to use something as cheap as a sign to level up your build, it's a no-brainer to add. Minecraft doesn't have seasons, but the leaves can still change. Since if you're willing to make the new copper grates that we're going to be finding in 1.21, then we can use these instead of leaves and have ourselves some autumn trees. And if you leave these in place and don't oxidize them, then that orange leaf is going to change back to more of a greenish color. Telling you it's time for summer, or time to place down some new autumn leaves, if that's what you wanted to keep up. Now, when you first see this pattern, it might be hard to decipher what's all going on. But really, by just placing one piston in the center, pistons facing into it on these sides, and then intertwining a bunch of that repeating flower pattern together, we can follow this example and get some really nice looking piston floors. And honestly, I'm amazed with how well the borders line up on the piston face like this. It kinda hurts your head to stare at for too long, but it's hard to say it's not cool on a floor. By this point, we're all plenty familiar with the grass block texture, which means using this in a build can often feel tired, or at the very least, underwhelming. But fortunately, we've got some blocks in recent years to help break up that monotony. Like, why not add a strip of moss to the green in your yard to make it look mowed? Or even just mixing in some green concrete powder here and there can help to texture those paths we've seen hundreds of times before. Minecraft has come a long way from just the stone and oak buttons of the past, but while the new additions don't add in new pulse lengths, they do make a great candidate for detail. Take, for example, this stone wall. By itself, it's nothing too fancy, but add in some of these colorful buttons, and the thing becomes a convincing rock climbing wall. Or for those of you in creative, concrete and invisible item frames should work just as well, maybe even better. With the armadillo coming to Minecraft, it's time that we give it something to eat too. And that's what this user thought when they made this termite mound for the armadillo. But I know what you're thinking, we don't exactly have termites in Minecraft, and that's why this is so ingenious. Because by just using melon seeds inside of an invisible item frame, from far away, they look like the bugs. And I think that's just adorable. You can even rotate them to add extra character. Very nice. Now, I'll be honest, I never figured anvils to be much good for decorating. But when we start using these for a floor pattern, then it's a different story. So while we probably need a decent iron farmer to pull this off, it is cool to know that with their different hitboxes, these blocks can let us build something special. What looks different between these two logs? Well, even if you can't put your finger on it from this angle, you might feel that this one is a bit more realistic. So, how does it work? Well, by placing an item frame on the top like so, we get a sneaky bit of detail to our tree trunks. And with this, we might be able to get away with leaving a few more trees chopped down like so in the forest. And hey, it looks better than yet another barren forest biome, so it might be worth trying. Every builder loves half slabs, but while these are great, they're not ubiquitous, meaning we're fairly limited in the half steps we can use. Or so you thought. Since if we take after this user, we can actually use beds as a substitute. See, all it takes is placing one of the 16 bed types and then right-clicking it with a debug stick to get something of a colorful slab to use. And sure, the feet might be a giveaway from this angle, but anywhere else, the illusion does the trick. Now, in theory, using Dripleaf as a desk would be a pretty lousy concept, but taking a look at this, I'm reconsidering. By just putting a slab with a sign in front of it, then we've got a simple stool in front of our simple desk. Add a flower pot on top, it looks pretty nice. And if you don't want it to fall over, just power it with redstone, and that Dripleaf's never gonna crash. Pretty cool. Minecraft swamps are set for a lot of change, and with that comes plenty of new plants to see. However, that doesn't mean we can't add in a few of our own. So until they're announced, why not fake it with this cattail creation? All you need to do is place 2 support blocks, lay out your brown candles, and then replace the support with a plant of your choice. And it's definitely a way to take your sugarcane to the next level. Shulkers render like entities, which means that if you get far enough away, they'll just completely disappear before the blocks do. And while that would seem like it would make them terrible to build with, the truth's actually anything but. Since if we take after this example, you can actually see that by using shulkers in certain patterns like this, then we can actually add shadows into our build. Now, I'll fully admit, from up close, this looks hideous in this example, but as you step far enough away and you have this in the background, it really is something special, looking more like a rendered image than anything that was supposed to happen in Minecraft. Just make sure they have some barrier separating the viewers. You don't want them getting too close and revealing how the sausage gets made. Sometimes it pays to have a different perspective. So while a block might look one way while it's facing you, if you flip it around, it might just be used in an entirely different way. So sure, you could use a lectern as just that, but if you rotate it around 180 degrees, then it makes for a fancy banister to use on your staircase. With how clean Minecraft's textures can be, it can often be tough to make something look weathered or destroyed. Take a ruined portal for example. These are supposed to be burnt up and badly damaged, but but the regular stone brick doesn't always sell that. So instead, we could add some of the Deepslate and Blackstone variants to the mix and make charred and damaged stone to your builds, which not only gives the blocks they're using some personality, but also helps your build to tell a story. When you're making a big build, sometimes the littlest details can go a long way, and for that, I think particle effects definitely fit the bill. And while there are plenty of existing ones to put on display with command blocks, that doesn't stop us from making our own. For example, take this Vat of Acid. By itself, it looks pretty bland, more like a green pool than anything else. But add some invisible armor stands into position with slime blocks on their head, and now we've got a bubbling mixture fit for a radiation warning. Or hey, do what these folks did and add some custom leaves falling off your cherry tree. Now, you probably don't want to sit on a campfire, but extinguish it and add some signs like so, and now we've got ourselves a bench that's worth trying. And while that's a solid start, what I love about this example is the little bit of pathland in front of the bench, which makes it look like it's stamped down from all the people who sat there, bringing it all together to make this perfect for a future park. Farms are a staple of Minecraft design, especially in survival, but while we're all used to the fields of wheat, carrots, and beetroots, this might be a stranger sight. Though, sure enough, we can take after this user and add in turtle shell helmets for something of a cabbage plant in your farmland. Just make sure you have the armor stands placed on a daylight sensor down below, otherwise they won't have enough height to peek through. Adding custom plants to your base can really improve a build just like that, though not everyone is looking to sink the time into building a custom tree. So why don't we start small and just improve your pumpkins and your jack-o'-lanterns. By throwing a sea pickle to the top of one of these, we can add a nice little stem to the picture. Or hey, candles could also do the same effect. And either option will definitely step up your game next Halloween. So you're probably not building your house out of melon, but this might make you reconsider, because strangely enough, if you use melon blocks as a texture for your walls, it'll look like a wallpaper ripped straight out of the 60s. And hey, mix in some green furniture, this will actually start to look kinda nice, even if it is a little dated. At first, shroom lights and dead coral don't seem to have anything in common, but when you place them side by side, you'll recognize that a dead bubble coral block looks like a depleted shroom light. So if you want to make it look like part of your store's light up sign burnt out, this is easily the best way to do that. In Minecraft, you don't need to water your plants, but maybe we should have. See, if you mix in the new mangrove roots, we can make a convincing set of dead or dying plants. And honestly, I think this adds in a lot of personality to your builds, even if it is a little creepy. Minecraft torches don't burn out, but we can make it look like they do. By simply using redstone torches instead, we can power these to make a really cool effect for your next mine shaft. And considering the only other way to get torches to burn out is to play on the April Fool's release of Minecraft 2.0, I'd say this is a step up, for sure. Why does this river look better than this one? Well, even though they're both filled with water, what's underneath that water makes all the difference. And as we can surely see here, if you use blue blocks in the lake bed, you get a much prettier, more vibrant body of water. So if you've got the cyan dye, I would opt for this instead of yet another muddy patch of dirt and clay. Bridges are nothing new to Minecraft, but a rusty bridge, that's something fresh. Ironically so, I guess. With the help of the new mangrove roots, we can make these cool metal bridges to connect parts of your industrial base. And while I wouldn't suggest stepping on top of it without a tetanus shot, it does make for a new staple to a post-apocalyptic build. Structure void blocks don't get a lot of love in Minecraft, and really there's not too much that you can do with them. But by putting sculk veins on top of the block, then it's possible to get ourselves what happens to look like a block of sculk leaves. And as you can see by this example of a sculk vine tree, that can look really cool if you build these in the deep dark. Now by itself, the new cherry saplings offer a lot of great pink blocks to play around with. You just might need to strip it down to its inside. But when you go to place down all these new pink blocks, you really just get something that looks like slime, and not the fun ones that gets you a lot of views on YouTube. I'm talking about the ones that they make chicken nuggets out of. And in that case, I think you should use a couple of quartz blocks to frame it up like so. Just with that little bit of white, it paints it together a lot nicer. And I think this can really do wonders if you use it on the roof. Or if you build it like I did, it just looks like a strawberry milk carton. That might be a plus, I don't know. Quartz isn't the only block that works well with cherry wood. And really, using a couple of purpur blocks, let's make for some great pillars if you want to divvy up your build. And personally, I think it looks really nice for framing your doorway. And the doorway wasn't the only one that was framed, alright? With just two stair blocks facing in like this, we can place down the dragon egg and a quartz pillar block like this until we eventually have ourselves a table lamp. Clearly, it's tough to build anything realistic in Minecraft, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try where we can. So for a start, let's take these hillsides and transform them into a classic grassy hill. See, since there's only grass on the top texture of our grass blocks, then a simple solution would be to take some moss and place it around the dirt parts of the hill like so. And that way, the distracting dark brown dirt gets replaced with a more complementing green. And while it's probably still too boxy to look realistic realistic up close, if you zoom out, it's a marked improvement for sure, and it'll be worth trying at your next hillside cottage. By now, you've probably seen one of these pianos before, and while they're nice, obtaining just one dragon head in survival can be tricky, let alone this many. So, lucky for us, by using looms and some wood, we can save ourselves the trouble. And since the texture of the loom looks like piano keys from this angle, we're capable of building a much cheaper version of the traditional dragon head approach. And while it might lack some of the detail, it is easy to make. And that way we can also save those dragon heads for something extra special. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?